Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Israel War Info Uncensored. This is Mike Benavi, your group admin and your host, and with me, a very special guest. She's an author, she's a political commentator, and she is the editor of the Geller Report. Ms. Pamela Geller, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. I want to ask you a question. I want to take you back to October 7th of this year, a little over a month ago. After the picture was cleared and you knew kind of what happened, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
The first thing that went through my mind was that it shouldn't have happened. The first thing that went through my mind was in unspeakable grief. Um, it didn't shock me, having covered Islamic atrocities for the better part of the past 25 years. One only has to look at the Fogel family and how they were slaughtered, or even in Europe, Ilan Halimi in France, or Sarah Halimi, or the Bataclan, or 7/7 in London. This is not new, or really the mass slaughter of Christians under the Islamic State and the Yazidis, and on and on. And uh, but so much all at once. Uh, it was so devastating that many of us still have not digested it, let alone put it behind us, or whatever word you want to use, recovered. And of course, on top of that is the world's grievous, unforgivable response. Not all, but what we're seeing in the streets, the fact that, look, the basis of my work is individual rights and freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So I'm all for freedom of speech. Uh, but what we're not seeing, not anywhere, is, let's say, a march of Muslims for Israel. We never see that. Now,
Right.
I've been covering this for the past, as I said, 25 years. I've been covering these anti-Israel rallies. I used to go until I became too recognizable, and I couldn't have that much security with me. It's a lot of money, but uh, these rallies have always looked like this. The difference now
Mhm.
is number. In the beginning, in 2003 and 2004, it was 100 people, it was 200 people, then it was 1,000 people, then it was 2,000 people. What you're seeing is the advent of the hijra. What you're seeing is the consequences of mass Muslim immigration into the West, and
Right.
it's a very dangerous component of what's going on.
Right. And in the beginning, I want to take you back to the beginning of your words. You were mentioning that it's happening all around the world, and it does happen all around the world. I want to mention something to my followers, the viewers, the listeners. You guys don't know, but just in 2022, you had over 5,200 Christians in Africa. I think it was in Uganda that were slaughtered by Muslims. And yeah, I have to say they were slaughtered by Muslims solely for their religion because they're Christians and they couldn't be coexisting there just because they're African and they're out there and nobody really cares, nobody really covers that. But the atrocity, the way that they were slaughtered there were very similar to the way that the people of southern Israel were slaughtered. And taking you back, you said something very important, and I mentioned it in my broadcast a couple of days ago. I do every 2 days. I do an update on what's going on here with the war. But you talked about the First Amendment, the sacred amendment of freedom of speech, and of course, there's the Second Amendment, right to bear arms, which is just as sacred. But when this Constitution was written and given, it was given to a society that is pro-life and pro-American values and pro just defending yourself against evil. And now what happens is we get all these people flooding the southern border and automatically just becoming part of the American, unfortunately, part of the American society or the American people without us inviting them there. I'm afraid that they're just using the Constitution against America. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, they just arrested a Jordanian so-called refugee or illegal alien. It was somebody who came on a tourist visa and, of course, decided to stay. And there were pictures of him online. I think I posted it. He was in a gun store somewhere. He had like an automatic rifle,
Houston.
and he was he was caught, and he planned to murder Jews. Now you have the First Amendment, all this subhuman garbage of U.S. colleges right now, which are the majority of them. You know, people think like these are the protests in America. These are not American people. 99% of the people in these protests are Muslim, Arab immigrants. The majority of them are so-called refugees. The other majority are illegals. They hate America. They're the same people who hand out candy and danced on the roof when 9/11 happened, right after it happened. And with them, you unfortunately you have Jews who I call self-hating Jews, liberal Jews who are also anti-Israel, just as bad, and they're rallied together and they're using the right for freedom of speech to justify terrorism, which
No,
I think this is
listen.
a dangerous path.
Well, first of all, yeah, they're pulling freedom of speech out after a decades-long war on the freedom of speech. I used to speak on college campuses all the time. And then, of course, they were met with leftist Islamic protests and demands that I be canceled, and I was canceled, and then I stopped being invited. And this is also the fault of Jewish lay leadership in this country. I think that it'll forever be a stain on Jewish history, the American Jewish leadership. When I was scheduled to speak in Los Angeles, Muslim Brotherhood groups like the Council of American Islamic Relations demanded that I be canceled, and UJA canceled me. And we see this time and time again. You call them self-loathing Jews. I call them Jewicidals. I call them anti-Jew Jews. I think that these Jews have been a plague on our people since time immemorial. If you go back to the Bible, if you go back to when Hashem parted the sea and Moses sent 12
The
spies,
Arab Rav,
he,
yeah,
he sent 12 spies into Canaan or Canaan, which is now Israel, of course, to see if
they
it was
spoke bad. They spoke bad about Israel. Yeah.
10. Wait, 10. 10 of the 12 said it was terrible and we can't go there. And 2 said, oh, it's fabulous. It's the land of milk and honey. Those 2 are the Republicans. The 10 are Democrats. And the ratio is still the same. The ratio is still the same. 80% of Jews in America are on the left, the other 20, and many godless, many not God-fearing. Many are secular ethnic Jews. The religious Jews loved Trump. The religious Jews voted for Trump. The religious Jews are on the right. But what I'm saying is this is not new. Even when Moses went up to get the tablets, there was a bunch of Jews down there, and they built a golden calf. Those were the left. Those were the Democrats. This is not new. But what is new is all of this Arab money, this Muslim money that came in billions into college universities, and they bought them. They bought them hook, line, and sinker. Back in 2005, there was a young Jewish student at Harvard University, Rachel Fish, who heard that there was a $2.5 million contribution from the UAE, and she looked into it and she saw that this think tank, and I use that term euphemistically, but they would sponsor viciously anti-Jewish speakers, and she spoke out, and she wrote to websites, blogs like mine, and she got Harvard to return that money. Now, fast forward
Wow.
20 years, we're in a vastly different place. Vastly different place. Things don't just happen, they are made to happen. And you are seeing the poison fruit from years and years of infiltration by subversive forces into the media, into academia, into our government. And what's happening was the only place that it could go. Nothing is static, everything is fluid, everything is going somewhere. And I think that Israel, and again, I am not in Israel, and those of you that are listening in Israel can take issue with what I'm saying because I will never say I know better. But I do believe that Israel began to suffer from the same afflictions that many Western countries did. They got comfortable, they bought into the whole, two-state coexistence. I mean, to an extent, but they got comfortable. And I saw young people weren't enlisting, and we saw millions take to the streets to protest judicial. These are the luxuries of a safe Western nation.
I'll
Israel,
go further, Pamela, if you don't mind. I'll go further than that. These are the same people you're talking about that did the golden calf and the spies. These are the same people, and I'll tell you why later. The people of Israel that flood the streets.
okay, yeah, okay. I didn't know if you were finished. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
But my point is that Israel will never be in that position, no matter what is going on. They will never be in the comfortable position where, well, we made peace with the Gazans, and look, they're coming to work, and look, we saw, I'm sure many of your listeners are aware of what happened in, Russia, where mobs of Muslims rushed to the airport because they heard a plane was landing from Israel. And one of the Jews that lived there said, and I'll quote, "I can't describe how shocking it is to see neighbors who we played with as children and whom we visited when we went back turn on the Jewish community so violently and so suddenly." And this is not new. We see this throughout Islamic history. We see this through Jewish history. If you want to read an excellent book on is Jews in Islam, you would the book by Sir Martin Gilbert, Jews in Muslim lands, is an excellent historical primer for what you're living through. Many of these Gazans that I just referred to that are working and have work permits, they took part in the attack. They were cheering when young Jewish girls were brought in on carts into Gaza. Uh, it's a terrible reality, but I submit to you that you can avoid reality, but you cannot avoid the consequences of avoiding reality. And that's what October 7th was.
Well, exactly. And I tell people when they speak about, the civilians of Gaza, when they try to separate Gaza from Hamas and Hamas from Gaza. And I tell them as a Middle Eastern scholar, I said, Gaza is Hamas and Hamas is Gaza. Unlike Iran, you're not dealing with fanatical leadership who took over a people who used to be allies with Israel and the United States, who some of them are secular and want freedom. And no, here, Gaza is what created Hamas with money from Qatar and Turkey and smuggling from Egypt and everything is
And the
to
EU,
destroy Israel.
and the
Yeah, yeah.
EU, and
And the
US,
UN.
and USAID. I mean, look, there's a complicity here. And as you said, I thought so succinctly, uh, you know, uh, in the beginning of the show, you cannot cure an illness that you will not or cannot diagnose. There can be no
Mhm.
cure until we're honest. And I don't see, even now, that honesty. I think the whole premise of the conflict in the region is false. I think the whole argument is a lie. I have always thought that, by the way, as soon as I began reading up on Islamic doctrine and Islamic text and teachings and the jihadic doctrine. And, even going back during World War II, how the leader of the Muslim world in that region, the Mufti of Jerusalem, was aligned with Hitler, with the Axis powers. The Mufti of Jerusalem lived in Berlin. He made regular radio addresses. Read those radio addresses. He is citing Quran chapter and verse, just as the leaders in the Muslim world, in Gaza, in Hamas, cite Quran chapter and verse. And we see these signs
And if I may,
at
sorry,
West. Yeah.
if I may add, Pamela, to before I forget, because I agree with you 100%. If I add by adding a very, very unflattering title to that Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, his name was, he was an SS general. Eichmann himself made him an SS, a Nazi SS general, because in Bosnia somewhere, he created squads of Nazi Muslim Bosnians who were willing to fight for Hitler. So for that, and for his encouragement and advice to how to exterminate Jews, because he knew back in 1929, where Jews were slaughtered before the state of Israel was established, there was atrocities just like what we saw on October 7 in just a
Hebron.
smaller scale. In Hebron, exactly.
Yes.
So I don't want to be too graphic, but women had their breasts cut off, and it's all in the Hebron Museum. There's a museum that exhibits all of these horrors. So women had their breasts cut off and put in their mouth, like men had their heads cut off, and it was the same thing. And it was before Israel was even a state.
Children are slaughtered. That was 1929, and in 1919, and he was under arrest. The Mufti al-Husseini, he was under arrest. They let him escape. And he wound up sitting at the table in 47 in the partition talks with the Jews and the Muslims. Look, there's a real problem. And the problem is we can't talk about the problem. The Quran teachings against the Jews, the hour will not be established until you fight the Jews, and the stone and the tree behind which a Jew will be hiding will say, "O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew hiding
Here's
behind
a Jew, kill it.
Come and kill him." Now we see that on the signs in London, in LA. We see this very Quranic teaching on the signs. We hear the chants, Kaiba Kaiba, Ya Yahud, Sheikh Muhammad Sayyid. This is Jews, the armies of Muhammad are coming, citing Khaybar, when Muhammad exterminated an entire tribe of Jews, the Qurayza tribe. This has nothing to do with land. It has everything to do with the existence of a Jewish state, which is deeply offensive, deeply insulting to the Ummah, to the Muslim world. That is the root cause of the war, of the jihad against the Jews. And until people start talking about this candidly and openly, we will continue this vicious cycle of endless Jewish death. And honestly, I'm sick from it. I'm as sick from it as I am the slaughter of October 7th. I'm sick for myself and my colleagues. My colleagues are some of those brilliant minds on this subject, like Ibn Warwick, like Robert Spencer. They are marginalized, they are smeared, they are defamed, they are liable, they are not welcome at the table of human discourse, like jihadis are, like the Council of American Islamic Relations, an organization set up as a stealth Hamas group in the United States. I am not saying that. That was entered into evidence in the largest terrorist funding trial in our nation's history, the Holy Land Foundation trial. I mean, it just goes on and on. We don't have the time to go into the infiltration here in the West. But, it always starts with the Jews. The Jew is the canary in the coal mine. But it's
exactly. I was about to say that.
It will certainly not end here. You hear these Muslims in Belgium. You hear these Muslims in Germany saying, without even couching it or trimming it, we intend to install a caliphate. We intend to install the Sharia. And this is what the West refuses to realize, that Muslim Muslims come to these countries with a ready-made model of society that they believe to be superior to what we have, and they will use every means possible to install it. And really, what they're waiting for are the numbers, and I think they have the numbers.
E- exactly. And if I may add, first of all, of course, I agree with everything you said. And if these words you're saying a few years ago were considered to be extreme or racist or non-political correct, I think that after October 7th, the people with common sense, the people with healthy minds, the people with a little bit of soul and heart in them will relate to these words and owe you an apology. I believe a lot of people owe you personally an apology for everything, because what you were saying back then just happened in front of their lives, and people have to understand, like Pamela said, it starts with the Jews, and it's only starting with the Jews because the Jews are in Israel right now, and according to the Quran, if the Jews will possess even a size as of a finger, a pinky finger, half of a pinky finger of land on the land of Israel, which they call Palestine, which, by the way, is an Arab lie. There was never a Palestinian state, people, currency, economy, nothing, nothing. This land was empty, and you can read Mark Twain's book, and he describes exactly how many people were in this land. So it's an Arab lie that was in the mid '60s by the Egyptian intelligence of how to eliminate the Jews from being here. But back to what I was saying,
No, but
it start
that's a very important point. If one goes back to before 48 and looks up the flag of quote unquote Palestine, and it's in French encyclopedias, I have it, I've scanned it, it's on my site. It is an Israeli flag, but the Star of David is in yellow. The number one newspaper, the Palestine Post, was a Jewish newspaper. We are Palestinians. And when they went to name the country, uh, and Ben Gurion said it had to be Israel, they said they'll steal the name. He says, I know, but it has to be Israel. It must be Israel. I mean, we are the Palestinians. They steal they steal everything from us and then say that we're stealing. I mean, and
exactly.
this is the way they work. As far as what it was the Mufti of Jerusalem, Al Husseini, who said we must take that dilapidated mosque, which was completely deteriorated, which was not used. It was a pile of rubble. He said we must go out across the Muslim world. We must raise money for it. We must make it, we must put a gold dome on it as an act of supremacism, of Islamic supremacism, and claim it as our own. And it is that gold dome, which I think is, it's an affront to me on this on the
Mhm.
landscape of Jerusalem and the hotel. It's
Mhm.
Al Aqsa, and it is the holiest Jewish site. That temple is the holiest Jewish site. But again, this is not taught. It is not only not taught in social study and history classes, but I submit to you, it is not taught at all in Jewish schools. I, my family went to the modern Orthodox. I mean, we also Solomon Schechter, which is of course less so, but even in modern Orthodox Jewish day schools, they know nothing about Islamic Jew hatred. They know nothing about the history of the British Mandate of Palestine. They know nothing about the war, that's been ongoing against the Jews, not just since 48, but since the creation of Islam. So how can Jews possibly fight in a war where they don't even know or understand the enemy? And they think it's about land. So the Jews say, okay, we'll give you some land. I mean, Sharon, the lion, Ariel Sharon, the lion, unilaterally, without condition, withdrew from Gaza, pulled Jews out of their homes, literally, not a Jewish toenail was left in Gaza. What they did do, though, was they left the industry paid for largely by American Jews, the greenhouses, the hothouses, the fields, the agriculture, so that Palestinians, and I use that word with, it sticks in my throat, but okay, would have a
Yeah,
thriving
point of reference.
economy, could make a life. Here's your state. And what did they do? They established a launching pad to attack the Jews. That's what it's become, a terror statelet. The very first day, what happened? They destroyed those greenhouses. They destroyed those fields. They destroyed every beautiful thing that was left to them. And again, nobody knows the story, but look it up. You'll see the pictures of the before and after. It's tragic. It's a crime. It's literally a war crime. It's a crime against humanity. And that's what they did. And they're living in the lap of luxury in Qatar. And the United States is partnering with Qatar. You could throw up from it all.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know Qatar is the number one financial sponsor of Hamas. The millions that were coming, thank God, no longer. And I really hope for this Netanyahu government to finish this job completely. Do not listen to Anthony Blinken coming here on behalf of Biden, who's coming here on behalf of the squad, and his advisors were telling him that he is not doing well in the polls and he has to be more pro-Palestinian. You have to tell the United States, thank you. The $14 billion are not because of Biden's generosity. This is because of other Israel-loving, Israel-supporting American in the Senate and the House of Representatives. This is not a gift, a personal gift from Biden. And Biden, I suggest, and I'm asking you as an Israeli who's hearing these explosions and sirens 24/7 outside my window, do not stop Israel from finishing the job. And finishing the job meaning eliminating Hamas, physically killing all Hamas terrorists and their supporters, which means the people of Gaza either run to Egypt or face consequences. Level this place out and take the land from them. Take the land back and put Israelis there. You want to teach terror a lesson? I'm telling you from Islamic studies point of view. You want to teach terror? They don't care about lives lost. I mean, you have to understand the people of Gaza. The reason Ms. Geller said that they were destroying the greenhouses and everything is because their culture is. I mean, you have to understand little kids in Gaza since childhood. They're a hero. Their aspiration, the people they look up to are baby killers. I mean, they worship the terrorist image. They want to be terrorists. They don't care about raising their kids. They don't care about their well-being as long as they can hurt and kill the Jew. And going back to what we were talking about, they don't know it in Europe. Europe, I think, is already doomed or close to be doomed because of the masses, the daily masses. They're going there. Some neighborhoods, some districts, not even neighborhoods, are no police would
No,
ever go in there. Yeah, the incitement.
they're no-go zones.
Exactly. The incitements against the West, against Israel, against America is, and it's out there. You can just YouTube, you'll see what they say. They say, we're here to take over. You know, to them, Spain is an Islamic state because Islam conquered Spain before in the far history. And since then, they claim that it's an Islamic state. So once in Islam, you conquer a land, it can never be given back. And they'll fight for it.
That's Waqf, W-A-Q. That's what that
is.
Yes. Once it's
and it's the Dar of Harb, the house of war. Anything that it's not already Islamic will be Islamic no matter what, and it will stop at nothing. In Jewish people, I mean, it's not against Jewish people. It's against the West. 80% of the Quran and the Hadith is dealing with infidels. The rest is the laws of war, how to kill the infidels, how to humiliate the infidels. And they mean what they say. They pray about it. They every Friday in their mosques, they talk about it. They don't talk about how to make the world a better place. Islam does not mean salam like people think. Islam means submission in Arabic, meaning you will be Islamic. That you have to understand. They believe with all their hearts that Muhammad was the last prophet to bring the last gospel, the last message, and that message is the only message. And anything else, meaning Christianity and Judaism, when they see Jews coming back to their land after 2,000 years in exile, and living Judaism again, and they think and know and believe that Muhammad brought the last message, they see it as like reverse of history. They see it as canceling Islam, and that's why they fight it, and that's why they'll continue to fight it. And if Israel, God forbid, will no longer be, they will continue to do it like they're doing it now in the United States of America, in Europe, and like you said, all they're waiting for is the number. In Islamic war, Islamic law. If you ever study Islamic law, you'll know the laws of war. When to take a hudna, a ceasefire, when you're weaker, but when you're stronger, you must attack. Because if you take a hudna, which is a ceasefire in Arabic, from the place of weakness, you're still canceling jihad, the holy war, the war for God, the war to release all the world from any other religion but Islam. You have to submit to Islam. They live this reality, and some of them take active, part in it, like these terrorists. But the rest of them are the support system of
Right.
these terrorists. They
It's a
don't condemn them;
it's a
they
stealth.
support them.
It's a stealth. There's the stealth jihad. Those are the ones in universities and so on and so forth. Look, I submit that everything's misunderstood. Even the cry of Allahu Akbar. People think it means that God is great. It doesn't. It means Allah is greater. Greater, not greater. Greater. Greater than what? Greater than your God. And to your point about the Hudna, Muhammad said, if you're losing a war, that you should agree to a temporary ceasefire. You should agree to a temporary truce so you can go back, rearm, regroup, and continue hostilities. The idea that the world is asking Israel for a ceasefire, they are asking Israel not to defend herself, because it's not Israel stopping the war. Israel didn't start a war. Israel is defending herself. And they're saying to Israel, stop and save Hamas, because it does. That's exactly what it will do. It will save Hamas. And as far as Palestinian casualties, I don't know how many more leaflets Israel can drop. I don't know how many more phone calls Israel can make. Hey, listen, we're coming at 5 o'clock to take out the rocket launcher in your living room. It's absurd. This standard that Israel is
Right.
fight by, that no one else is. In innocent civilians. How come no one's talking about the innocent civilians in Russia? How come no one is talking about or talked about, let's say, the Germans? Not all Germans are Nazis. What about the German civilians? You never hear that claptrap. It's only for the Jews, and the Jews have to stop buying into it because the world hates you anyway. So do what you have to do. The idea that Israel would stop, that is surrender. And
Do you
I
know? I have a quick. Do you
and
know what cracks? Yeah, go ahead.
Jewish babies are too precious and too holy for any platitudes of bullshittery. Those babies, I, it makes me sick. They are not. It is nothing to be negotiated. It is over. There is no negotiation. This is self-defense. This is self-preservation. People want to equate it and add it to Ukraine. Ukraine is a money laundering operation for politicians. Israel's fight is for life and death. And as far as the rest of the world goes, I have to say, screw them. They are not on your side. Why would you listen to someone who's not on your side? You have to save yourself. And this is just a hudna. You're just giving Hamas more time to kill more of your people. It's unacceptable. I mean, I don't know what Netanyahu's thinking. I believe he must be shook to his core that this happened under his watch, that they were woefully unprepared. In fairness and in defense, I think that Israel was always ready to accept a certain amount of terror because that's the cost of being in that region. But I don't think Israel saw all of this all at once and so much. I really don't think they foresaw that. And you could cite the intel. You could blame Golda Meir in '73. I'm prepared then too. I mean, this is an enemy that will never, ever stop. Now, what are you going to do? If that's your premise, if you're not arguing off of a two-state and a this and all this other nonsense that they've been conning you with Oslo and all the other bullshit, okay, if your premise is they will never stop, that's how you have to plan. That has to be the basis of your tactical, your military, your Napoleonic approach to self-defense. This is not war. This is self-defense. And the idea that they would stop is a crime. It's criminal to stop. It's a crime against the Jewish people to stop.
Exactly. And you know what cracks me up? I want to ask you that. Tell me if explain this to me. Only when it comes to Israel, you hear these leaders, you hear Secretary Blinken, you hear Joe Biden, we support the right for Israel to defend itself. I mean, isn't it obvious? Do you know any nation that doesn't have a right to defend itself?
Right.
It's almost like they're doing Israel a favor. I mean, if you hear them, only when it comes to Israel, you hear like, we support Israel's right to defend itself. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, but they don't.
Their generosity.
No,
and they don't.
But they don't, because
and they don't.
If they're asking for a ceasefire, then they are not supporting Israel's right to defend herself.
Exactly. Look.
Civilians. I saw too many innocent civilians running into Gaza. I saw too many innocent civilians take part in that attack. I saw too many innocent civilians cheering as Jewish bodies were brought into Gaza. And there's only one thing more valuable to these Islamic groups like Hamas and Fatah than a Jewish dead body. The only thing more valuable than a Jewish dead body is a Palestinian dead body, because they love to roll it up the flagpole and say, oh, look what the Jews did. Look how terrible they are. I'm bloody sick of it. I would think every Israeli is sick of it.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you something. If I were to meet Secretary Blinken, I would ask him that. I don't know why these reporters don't ask him these questions. I don't know if Netanyahu is asking these questions, if his cabinet member is asking them these questions, but I would ask that. I'm like, excuse me, I want to ask you a question, Secretary Blinken. How many fuel trucks or food or water or electricity or internet trucks or supplies went into Mosul back then when you were fighting, when you're sieging the city of Mosul in Iraq, and you and the Iraqi army were fighting ISIS, and you pretty much leveled Mosul? Do you know how many civilians died over the so-called innocent civilians? And in that case, I believe that some of them were human shields, were real human shields. Where in Gaza, these people are not human shields. These people are the families of Hamas. Hamas is not just these militants, these terrorists with arms. Hamas are those who work for Hamas post office. Hamas are those who work for Hamas banks, who run their money, the families, the people who are chanting in the streets. These are Hamas. Do you know? Hamas is Gaza. And for all these years, for decades, people don't understand, but Israel's been providing them water. Israel's been providing them electricity. It's like the US would feed and give electricity and internet to the Taliban right after 9/11. It's unheard of. And it's miracle that we're still surviving under this administration.
You left something out. How about the Hamas terrorists that are treated in your hospitals? I want someone to explain this to me, because I will not. I know what I know.
I can.
Wait, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know, and I don't know rabbinical law, this is wrong. This is absolutely on its face wrong. And for how many years have you been treating Palestinian terrorists? And the daughter of the Hamas leader, Haniya, you treated her too in the hospital. What I want to know, what goodwill you think you garnered from this. Show me.
It's not goodwill. It's not about goodwill. It's actually an evil act by the Israeli progressive liberal judicial system, who's stopping Israel from leveling Gaza on its terrorists. All these, they had a method before this war, because right now the people of Israel would not let them do that, because our blood is still boiling for what happened. But before that, the Israeli Supreme Court would stop us from bombing buildings in Gaza, even though we knew that there are terrorists in there. We had to send a tiny little bomb, like it's called a knock on the roof. Like you're knocking on somebody's roof, warning them, hey, get out, we're about to bomb this place. And only then we would bomb it. Gazans who would cross the border, infiltrate Israel, and most of them are potential terrorists. You got to treat them all as terrorists coming to infiltrate. The Israeli Supreme Court prevented the IDF from even shooting a warning shot if they're not armed. Like you have to understand, like Israel is not really a democracy. You know, we are ran by a very progressive, leftist, pro-Palestinian, pro-Arab. These are the people who would go prosecute Jews, but then let go of Arab supporters. You know how many people supported Hamas? Israelis who work in Israeli hospital. I'm terrified to go to an Israeli hospital right now, and I'm recovering from surgeries. Every day we read in the local news that a new doctor was found going on social media praising Hamas attacks on October 7th, a nurse, a teacher, a pharmacist, and I'm just shocked. And you know what happens to them? They get arrested and they get released after 24 hours. Well, it's part of freedom of speech and blah blah blah. And who releases them? Arab judges. Well, because of the how suicidal Israel is as far as its systems, we can never win like that. And that's to answer your question why we're treating them, not because we want to, but we are forced to.
Well, Israel has paid a terrible price, an incalculable price, an indescribable price, an unfathomable price. And I don't know. I'm sure there's not time at this moment for self-reflection, but Israel is broken, and she must fix herself if she means to survive. Now, whatever the world, and the world is always wrong. Look, the world loved Hitler until he started losing. Let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was aligned with Stalin until he turned on Stalin. So Israel has a lot of hard work to do, most really internally. I'm more worried. It's interesting, but I don't worry so much about the fanaticism of the enemy. I worry about the confusion on our side. And, Israel has to fix herself in a hurry. Now, is it possible? Is the country too far gone? I saw the millions in the street against reforms that would have amended the very things that you're talking about, the judicial reform. A million people in the street. Where were the other millions for the other side?
Stayed at home behind the keyboard.
Yeah, that's a problem.
That's pretty much what happened. Well, when you're in power, why would you go out? Like, okay, we have Netanyahu in power. Let them vent. Let them. I mean, that's what a lot of us actually work and contribute to the economy here and living and enjoying freedom. Just like in America, you have those who really want to destroy everything from within, defund the police, flood those beautiful cities we used to be so proud of, like San Francisco, who became a dump, under this administration and the administration before it, which is the same one, just with a puppet. But I want to take you back to America. Back in 2000.
Well, wait.
Go ahead.
This administration was not the same as the Trump administration. No.
No. I'm saying before it, meaning another Democrat one, Obama, which it's the same. Yeah. Of course.
You said
no, don't get me wrong. No. Previous meaning previous Democratic one.
Oh yeah.
As far as because they destroyed America. It started with Obama, all the Iran deal and all that stuff, and then it went back to Biden. To pretty much the same people are these Obama people running.
That was my first book. My first book, Obama administration, the post-American president, the Obama administration's war in America. And in that book, I detail Obama's long history of Jew hatred. And I predicted exactly what would happen with Iran and America in that book. But, of course, that book was labeled extremist. It's a very well-written book. It's not hyperbolic. Everything is cited. Everything is sourced, primary sources. But this is what they do to my colleagues and myself. Look, I'm not asked to speak in Israel. I am not desired by any side of the Jewish, but I know I have Yiddishkeit. I know in my heart, I am a proud, fierce Zionist. I love being a Jew. I think I'm extraordinarily privileged that I was born into Judaism, and I will, even if I'm the only one against a million, I will not stand down. I will never stand down because I know I'm right, and I know that I'm righteous, and we see this throughout history. Look, people may be feeling a bit downtrodden. It is overwhelming how quickly everything is coming down very fast. But if history has shown us anything, is that it takes a small group of people to build a big intellectual movement. And I believe that there is a silent and a silent majority that has been quiet and going along to get along for a long time until it started to affect the daily social fabric of their lives. And either we go quietly into that cold, dark night and we enter a very dark age. And if
Yeah.
one looks at history, you will see that periods of enlightenment, like the Renaissance, the great periods of enlightenment are always followed by a dark age. But that doesn't have to happen. I mean,
Exactly.
nothing is written in stone. And we do need this movement, this freedom movement, to rise up and push back in nonviolent ways, of
Of
course,
course.
until, well,
Yeah.
yeah, you say of course, but for example, without freedom of speech, peaceful men have no choice but to resort to violence. You see, that's why freedom of speech
No,
is so crucial.
I agree with you, but I see it like that, and I'll go back to my point about America, but I'll see it like that. If a person sees a fire, okay, in front of them, and that fire is spreading everywhere, and that person does not report it or warn people in the path of the fire, that person can be persecuted and go to jail for negligence or for, if I see a crime and not report it, and I could have saved people by reporting it, I could be in trouble. So all these years, just like yourself, I had no intention. I do have Muslim friends. Some of them are close friends that we have a lot in common. I mean, I really, to me, like, I judge people by their actions. And if you're born to be Muslim, fine. I believe that there is 1%. And sorry, I'm that extreme. I believe that there's maybe 1% out of 100% that maybe don't want to kill me at the moment or whatnot, or can just coexist with me. And some of them are right now fighting for the IDF. I'll give them that. Some of that 1% is fighting for the IDF, risking their lives to fight Hamas. Appreciate living in Israel, which is a heaven in the Middle East, comparing to, none of these countries. If people don't know, none of these Arab countries in over 1400 years of Islam, 1400 years of Islam, could not establish one democracy, one, even something that's coming close to democracy. So just think about that. And those who live in Israel live, people talk apartheid, like, oh, I mean, you come to visit 90% of our hospitals, both doctors, nurses, nurses, assistants, you name it, Arabs. Most of our pharmacists are Arabs. Most of our, I mean, drivers, you name it. There's no, I mean, Israel's trying to live in peace with its neighbors, but I tell people, if the Arabs, even the Arabs in Israel, and especially the Arabs in Israel, who are no different than the Arabs in Gaza and the Arabs in Judea and Samaria, what people know as the West Bank, they're the same. Their intentions are the same. Their abilities or their numbers are different. But one time an Arab told me that if they had the chance, all they need is the chance, the opportunity to overcome and overpower the Jews in Israel. Auschwitz, Auschwitz would look like a summer camp compared to what they would do to us. You saw a sneak preview, an unfortunate, horrifying preview on October 7th of what can happen to Israel all throughout the country if, God forbid, the IDF loses this war. This war started with Gaza, but this is a regional war. It's already a war in 5 fronts, if people don't know. And it's going to spread, and it's going to even, in my opinion, lead to something even more global, like a global crisis, a mini world war, who knows?
Right. And
But to
they'll
the people of them,
and they'll
Uh-huh.
blame the Jews.
Of course
And
they
they'll
blame the
blame the
Jews.
Jews, which is exactly what always happens. You cannot make peace with someone who wants to kill you.
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
right.
to me, it's just elementary. You cannot make. Yes, I want to sit down. I want to get along with you. Well, I don't want to get along with you. I want to kill you. No matter how fast that other person talks, and no matter how much that other person wants to be friends with you, I want to be your friend. They want to kill you. Now, what are you going to do? I mean, this is so. This is not complicated. I know everybody loves to say it's complicated. It's nuanced. It's no, it's not. It's gray. It's not gray. And I'll tell you something else. I know nobody wants to do it, but they're going to have to release those videos. They're going to have to release those videos that they are not releasing. Will it become a jihad porn? Yes. I'm sorry. But if let me tell you something, just for the record, because there were a couple of plots to assassinate me. As you know, they opened fire at an event that I hosted, a free speech event in Texas. Jihadis opened fire on the event, but I had my own. I had my own security. I had my own SWAT, and they took them out. They killed them. But there was also a plot to behead me coming out of Boston. Those that cell, that jihad cell, is in jail. But for the record, if I ever go down like that, I want those pictures out there, because I know that decent people, human beings, human beings will be repulsed, repelled, and it will be a call to action. Half the time, look, the way they covered up what happened in Paris, for example, at the Bataclan. Yes, we saw the theater with the rivers of blood. We saw that, but they didn't give the details about how their eyes were gouged out when they were alive, that the men had their testicles cut off and shoved down their throat, what they did to the women. They never told people that. People need to know, not
Yeah, well,
because we're
like
morbid.
a, like a,
For one, I can't stand the sight of blood. I mean, I have two sisters that are doctors. I don't know how they do it. I can't watch half the television that's on, because there's an obsession with violence and also cutting people open and autopsies. I don't get it. I can't. But people need to know the reality. You cannot avoid reality. You can't.
yeah, yeah. Well, I have an answer. I have an update about that. I have an answer. I mean, I'm pretty connected to a lot of journalists who are close to Netanyahu. I advise them behind the scene, and I can tell you that official Israel wants to release these videos. I mean, these videos. There is a 45-minute video that was played for many ambassadors and people,
And
I think, in the UN.
the BBC,
But
the BBC,
yeah,
the BBC didn't show up. A lot of major news outlets refused to cover it. They did not even show up. Okay, so it's
well, yeah,
the job of the
because Israel,
journalist.
yes, but Israel, I don't think that they didn't want to cover it more than Israel did not release it to them, and I'll tell you why. And it also was ruled in court today because the families have to agree by law for the IDF to release it worldwide because they're victims, and then there were an argument about maybe blurring the pictures and just showing, and the families still have to agree, and there has to be a unanimous agreement on that because Netanyahu is pushing for it because you have to understand
Why?
we need more legitimacy.
Why
We're
not?
starting to lose world legitimacy in
Why
Gaza,
not?
and it's
Yeah, you lost it as soon as you were born a Jew. Okay, you lost your legitimacy. Why not just
yeah.
a clip, short clips of the families that did agree? How about those to start with?
So I think that's what they're working on. But right now, I know that it's in court, and the court's saying, well, you got to wait, you got to have a unanimous agreement. They have to agree for it to be released worldwide. But at the same time, this is what the world needs to see. This is speaking Arabic for the first time. For the first time, Israel has a chance to win the media war that we've been losing war after war after
Yeah,
war.
okay,
And
that's never going to happen. I say you release it to reach the people. Forget the media. The media is your enemy. The media is an enormous machine in the arsenal against the Jewish state. Forget about it.
yeah,
But and I don't agree with everything he does, but I love him and I respect him and I salute him. And he's a historical game changer, Elon Musk, for opening up Twitter, which is now X, um, to free speech. I was banned. I had 250,000 followers, and he brought me back. Granted, I lost 50,000 when I was back. I'm not going to split hairs. I'm not going to get petty, but the fact is that it's the only platform that's free. Now, do I agree with what he did with Starlink? I don't. Do I believe that the road to hell is paved with good intentions? He said he was only going to be for humanitarian aid, and he was going through humanitarian organizations that were okayed by the UN. The UN is a radical arm of the global jihad force. But so I don't know if it's cluelessness. I don't think he's complicit. I think it's cluelessness. But if you're going to be in such a powerful position to do something so enormous, you better start learning everything before you make a move. But that said, it's up to citizen journalists to communicate it to the people. And that's why Israel should release it. The media will never be your friend. It is run, owned, lock, stock, and barrel by the left. It's an enormous octopus. It's an enormous octopus that will take decades to dissemble.
I agree. That's what a lot of people don't know. The American people who don't know, Hezbollah, the Shia organization that's on the Israeli northern borders,
we know
Iran's,
let's talk about
Iran's biggest proxy.
It's Iran's proxy, but that's another thing. It's not Hezbollah, H-E-Z.
It's Hezbollah.
O-L-L.
No, it's Hezbollah.
Yeah, but it's always why do they do that?
Party of God.
Why do they remove Allah, party of Allah? Why do they remove Allah and make it Olah? Why?
So you don't see how fanatic these people are and what's actually
tied to Islam. Why did President Obama call the Islamic State Daesh?
Freedom fighters? Yeah, Daesh.
Why? Same reason. And Boko Haram, which means what? It means Western civilization is bad. Let's start calling these things for what they are. I mean, Hamas is Boko Haram. Boko Haram is Al Qaeda. So they're all following the same playbook. They're just different battalions in the same army.
Exactly. But what I wanted to say is that Hezbollah has a direct link to the U.S. southern border. They are working with the biggest cartels. And if you don't believe me, Google it, read about it. They work with the cartel. They bring all the fentanyl into America. They bring terrorism into America.
Iran has been infiltrating Latin America for decades. They've created a power base there. And yes, they're absolutely coming up through that corridor into Mexico, into the United States. And I don't know what it's going to take, what horror is going to come down. But it's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
Yeah, I always tell people that the reason there is, and not God forbid 9/11 has yet to happen is because they're planning something bigger. And that takes time because when they hit America, they must hit America big in order to terrorize America.
Yeah.
And they're always waiting for this big event. And these are the sleeping cells, but that's for another conversation. But before we end, I have an answer to what you said. And until when is America needs to understand, the American people need to understand the 2024 elections are the most crucial, are the most important elections in American history. Like you have to understand the face of America will be determined by these elections. So make sure that you do the right thing and you get these Democrats out of power because there have never been a Democratic Party that has done so much damage in a little under 4 years than this current administration. Well, both globally and especially domestically.
Well, it was laid. So please, the groundwork was laid by Obama. He teamed the Department of Justice, the FBI, and all of these agencies with these operatives, with these far left ideologues, and they were not purged by Trump. I don't think Trump understood how really bad it was until after. But to your point about the election, I say there's something more important than that. And what my thinking is, and I've said this since 2020, is without election reform, Without cleaning up the election, it's already over. The fix is in with mail in ballots, with absentee ballots, with rooked machines that have internet access where the numbers are changed. I stayed up all night that night in 2020. I watched those numbers. I saw numbers
Yeah,
go
me too.
down. I saw Trump's numbers go down by hundreds of thousands in real time. I mean, 2020, I don't care what I sound like,
I know.
was stolen. And if you think that 2024 will be any different without real election reform, then you're drinking the Kool-Aid.
No, I know. I was working the Trump campaign back then. I know exactly what you're talking about. But when I bring that up, Pamela, I usually bring up civil war with that, because if that happens again, I don't even know what's going to happen. So I usually try not to bring it up because I don't even want to think about that scenario, because that's what's going to take people to the
We
streets.
don't we don't want that
And
scenario. We need election reform. And the fact that
yeah, well, let's hope that happens.
the Republican Party, which is half of it is a uniparty, half of it is Republicans in name only, have not made this an issue because they like the way things are. Their pockets are lined. They're corrupt. Look, the corruption is corruption is corruption. What are you going to do? And people vote Republican and they think, oh, I voted Republican, everything will be okay. No, you need to vet the individual. You need to check out the individual, who they are, what they voted for, what's their record. It's not enough to vote Republican. You have to know who you're voting for. But more importantly, the system. The system has to work. The French would never allow machines. It's only paper ballots. We need to go back to paper
Yeah.
ballots.
Yeah, in Israel we do paper ballots. I mean,
Of
that's the
course.
only way you can be accurate. And especially when you have a lot of immigrants that are illegal, and all they have to show is driver's license, which we know some state give it to them without having any documentations.
New York,
So there you go. Yeah, New York,
New
Illinois, there's many, many, many. Yeah, it's terrible, and I'm telling people, like, you have to understand, America is changing its face. All you have to do is look outside right now what they do in the colleges. These are the Ivy League schools that back in the 80s and the 90s, even in the early 2000s, we used to be so proud of. We
yeah.
used to be so proud of them. Like that were the icing on the cake when it comes to academia around the world, and everybody from all over the world wanted to come there, and in the name of the political correctness, like something happened here that is just
Well,
it's just it's too much.
what happened was diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what's interesting is that, people put up with it for a very long time because it was always leftist, but they were producing great minds. They were producing great scholars. But now they're producing idiots, okay, that major in gender studies, that major in these, insane, fallacious narratives. And so, while yes, we put up with the left wing nonsense, at least you were getting great brains. You were getting scholars and thinkers. Now you're getting idiots, and they really have destroyed the greatest educational institutions in human history.
Yeah, wow. As I'm speaking to you right now, I'm watching President Trump return to the stand in that trial. They're doing for him for fraud. They're doing anything they can to try. But I'm telling you, if he runs against Biden, even if they try to cheat, they won't be able to.
It won't be Biden.
Like, uh,
It won't be Biden.
well, that's what I'm saying. And that's
He's
what I'm afraid of. 'Cause,
he's a placeholder. They don't want to go through the
yeah,
they don't want to go through they didn't want to go through a primary process. They didn't want to dirty their hands. They're going to keep him there as long as they can, and then they're just going to install either a Michelle Obama or a Gavin Newsom. There's going to be no primary process. It's not going to be Biden, trust me. And then
oh, that's what my gut feeling as well.
yeah, that's for sure. I've thought that all along. The man is
Wow.
apprentice. He's Weekend at Bernie's. He's a joke. He's actually a perfect cartoon for what happened to America. He's actually a perfect illustration of America in 2020.
The face of New America. You're right. Well, Pamela, if I zoom out from everything, I want to tell you that I feel here in Israel that we're living in biblical times. We're living in times that really the world is going to hopefully get reshaped one way or another. I do see the world siding between good and evil. I do see a lot of people standing with good and strongly against evil. But I also see a lot of evil that's come out of ignorance and a lot of evil that I didn't know exists in that many numbers. And especially not in America, the place used to be outside of Israel, or even more than Israel, the safest place for Jews now becomes like one of the scariest places for Jews, and it breaks my heart. But I want to thank you so much for this wonderful conversation. And I didn't find anything extreme in our conversation tonight, but educational. And I'm sure a lot of the listeners would appreciate it, as I'm appreciating you joining me. And if you want to have just a last few words about how you see this war against Gaza, against Hamas in the Middle East, how do you see it unfold? Because I trust your gut feeling. Your gut feeling was right the whole way here. So I kind of personally want to know what's your gut feeling about how this is going to unfold.
My gut feeling on how this is going to unfold is as follows: no one is going to save you. You are going to save you. It's on the individual. It's not on the collective. It's not on the state. It's on you. And everybody has to fight. There are no fence sitters. Nobody on the fence here. If you're on the fence, you're with the enemy. You're helping the aiding and abetting the enemy. Never give up. Never surrender. Fight on your feet. Don't die on your knees.
Pamela Geller, an author, commentator, and the editor of the Geller's Report, I thank you so much for this conversation. And maybe we'll speak again in the future. Thank you so much for joining me.
I'm Israel Chai.
Amen. Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.